How terrifying would a zombie be if it lived with discipline? This zombie's name is Jiangxi. Every day he runs a light year, then races sharks, and even does a few dance routines before going to bed just to feel at ease. Other zombies only eat meat and more meat, while in his eyes, there's only protein powder. In the end, Jiangxi's head also became bald, but he had grown stronger than ever. Everything he did was just because he wanted to be friends with humans. The reason goes back to the day the end of the world broke out. While Jiangxi was in class listening to a lecture, he was suddenly turned into a zombie. After that, he was just like the other zombies wandering everywhere with a horde of them. Until one day, humans appeared with cannons. They not only slaughtered Jiangxi's kind, but also used technology to turn zombies into perpetual engines. Jiangxi didn't understand why humans were hunting zombies, just as he didn't understand why zombies ate humans. But to survive, he had to strive and become strong to change the way humans saw zombies. Will Jiangxi be able to achieve his dream? What other challenges will he face on the journey toward that dream? Let's dive into the story together to find out. Beneath the peaceful sunset sky, the train continued its journey, steadily running along the tracks. The wheels rolled over the iron rails, suddenly moving faster and faster. By the roadside, countless people were bustling back and forth along the street. The driver in the train cabin suddenly leaned out and shouted loudly, "Run! The train has lost control!" The crew members also risked their lives jumping off the train. This is bad. The people outside heard his voice, and everyone turned to look in shock. They quickly grabbed their sandals and fled. Run now. In the midst of that chaos, the wheel of a pushcart suddenly got stuck in the rail track. The woman struggled awkwardly with the cart but couldn't move it. "Someone help me, please." Those who had already escaped could only stand there and shout, "Get out of that danger zone now, there's no time." The out-of-control train sped straight toward the mother. Behind the panicked crowd, a young man with his face fully covered silently watched everything unfold. Then his figure instantly vanished when no one was paying attention. At that critical moment, the young man appeared and smashed the train's engine with a single punch. The entire train cars behind took the full force of the impact, veering off their tracks and crashing into each other. The woman still held her crying child tightly in her arms, trembling with fear. She shut her eyes tightly. Everything came to a sudden stop, making her slowly open her eyes to look. In front of her was nothing but a blinding white, with the upright back of a young man standing there. The stone fell to the ground, bounced a few times, and finally came to rest. The young man reached out his hand, offering help to the mother. "Are you all right?" She gently touched his arm and replied, "Thank you." The woman and her child both looked at their savior. No. Suddenly their faces turned pale with fear. The person standing before them had pale skin, a mouth full of sharp teeth, and sunken shadowy eye sockets, looking utterly monstrous. A terrified scream echoed all the way up into the high blue sky. Everything shifted to the scene of someone's house, where a pair of tiny yellow shorts was still hanging outside to dry. The young man stretched his arms energetically after a deep sleep. "My name is Jiangxi." Jiangxi turned to his window and welcomed the bright morning sunlight. His pink outfit with strawberry patterns stood out against his ageless body and unknown time of death. He walked into the bathroom and looked into the mirror. "I have a dream." A deep, earnest wish he held within him, he shared. "I dream of one day becoming friends with humans. I dream of a day when I am no longer shunned and chased away by them." The toothpaste was squeezed onto the brush by Jiangxi as he encouraged himself. "I always try my best for that goal, even though it seems a bit far off, but I believe as long as I keep trying." While taking care of his personal hygiene, he reminded himself, "I will definitely succeed." A tooth fell out and dropped into the sink after he finished brushing. Jiangxi used a hook to grab the shirt hanging high above. "In fact, to achieve this dream, I have helped humans many times before. There was one time when an entire airplane plunged like a moth into a flame onto the soccer field, causing panic among the people below. Run quickly!" The spectators in the stands pushed each other as they rushed upward. "It's too dangerous up here." Suddenly, someone terrified pointed toward the plane crash site and shouted, "Quick, look over there. What is that?" The entire plane was strangely suspended mid-air as if caught in place. Jiangxi was the one who caught it. The others couldn't help but gape in astonishment. Another time, a high-rise apartment building caught fire, causing many people to panic. "It's burning my child. My child is inside." Jiangxi rushed into the flames and came out carrying numerous children, giving the firefighters quite a scare. He wrung out the towel and recalled the old days before having such a strong body. "I only remember. Back then, the city was crowded with apartments when a strange atmosphere appeared. It was a summer day when the apocalypse struck and the zombie outbreak broke out. Let me slowly recount everything. I was sitting in school when the zombie outbreak started. Those who didn't escape in time were bitten by zombies and turned into zombies themselves. They crazily bit each other and all turned into zombies. Gradually, they spread throughout the city, turning it into a graveyard. Yes, those zombies were completely ordinary. Jiangxi twisted and turned inside the crowd like a fool. I was just like a rookie soldier following wherever my kind went. Those humans brought out a blazing hot 6-barrel gun. It wasn't until later that some people showed up, muscular soldiers armed with guns and cannons at the ready. They did not bother reasoning with me the moment they appeared. They shoved a fire-spewing stick right into my face. Zombies weaker than them were all shot in the head. We were massacred. Some of the dumber ones were taken back to become high-level housemaids. They not only turned us into oil lamps, but also invented the eternal zombie engine to generate unlimited electricity for themselves. Jiang-si lay alone on his simple bed thinking, I do not understand why zombies have to eat humans, or why humans have to slaughter zombies to survive. I decided to change myself. He ran into the gym room by himself, turned on the machine and started training. From that day on, I began to discipline myself. Even though the first time I lifted weights, my soul nearly left my body, I remained very persistent. Every day I exercised, ran, swam, and did bar jumps to increase the intensity of my training. Jiang-si even used sharks to chase after himself. Since living a different kind of life, I said goodbye to all kinds of meat. My meals were simple, but I worked hard to nourish my body every day. I only ate egg whites. Even at home, Jiang-si kept practicing different exercises, no matter how hard or tiring it was. He still persevered with aerobic workouts every night. Finally, one day, muscles began to bulge all over his body. I succeeded. He looked back at himself with a solid six-pack body. I became an undefeated champion. Then he decided to put on a modest outfit and head toward the city. After that, I focused my strength and intelligence and began to blend into human society. Humans had become highly advanced and numerous, making it possible for me to infiltrate and change their perception of zombies. I kept helping them. I also tried to be a good zombie citizen, speaking politely, behaving with manners, and following the law. He continued to hang his shirt out to dry. Jiang-si opened the fridge and saw only an empty box, out of food already. The situation forced him to go out and buy food. Today, the blazing sunlight shone down onto the rooftop of the building. Inside a convenience store, the employee cheerfully greeted a familiar customer. Xiao Jiang coming to restock again, she asked him kindly, "Don't you get uncomfortable wearing that mask all day?" Jiang-si held a few cartons of eggs in his hands and replied, "It's not uncomfortable at all." The truck outside was busy being loaded with eggs. Everyone helped Boss Jiang load the eggs onto the truck and head out right away. He happily chatted with the employee, unaware of what was happening outside. Two people, one young and one old, were secretly watching Jiang-si. The younger one asked the person beside him, "Captain, it's him, right?" The older man narrowed his eyes at Jiang-si and replied, "That's right. Today we must expose that mask of his and see who he really is." The telescope helped the man see Jiang-si's actions more clearly as he waved to the staff. He held a piece of paper in his hand and sadly said, "Our goo is wanted again." The paper showed the image of a zombie, with its face fully covered, labeled as Level 3S, extremely powerful. The young man holding the camera asked curiously, "Sir, he looks like that. Do you think he could be the superhuman who lifted the entire plane? Could it be the media just made it all up?" The older man kept watching closely. "Very possible." But then the middle-aged man firmly declared, "No, it's definitely real." He looked down, then slowly turned to the front. "That's why we must expose his face." Just as he finished speaking, both of them stood there, wide-eyed mouths agape, and shouted loudly. Jiang-si lifted the truck with both hands effortlessly. He looked up at the sky and got ready to do something. Then the ground cracked from the force of his takeoff. In a flash, the young man soared straight into the sky like some kind of magic. Both of them stood frozen, staring in disbelief. Is this some kind of joke? Outside the Earth, Jiang-si carried the truck and flew across to another continent. The place he arrived at was heavily fenced off and tightly guarded. The sky above was pitch dark. Other zombies wandered around the ruined neighborhood. A child clung to his mother and cried, "I'm so hungry." She gently comforted the boy. "Hold on just a little longer." Jiang-si finally arrived and landed on the ground with immense force. He landed with a loud crash, shaking the very space around him. The delivery truck was gently set down by him. The zombies there opened their mouths and said, "The great master has returned." Suddenly a child approached and asked him, "Master, you move so quickly, why didn't you capture the human driver who came here?" Jiang-si replied, "Even though they don't quite understand the answer, I don't have a driver's license." This neighborhood was shrouded in a dark and desolate atmosphere. This was the area I ruled a hidden refuge, chosen to stay away from humans. I ordered the residents to use eggs instead of human flesh. He asked the boy, "Where is our goo?" The boy pointed to a dilapidated hotel. "They're inside that ruined hotel over there." Jiang-si walked over and opened the apartment door by himself. In front of him were two zombies like werewolves, R Lang, a level SSS Danger zombie boss, and R Fur, also a level SSS Danger zombie boss. Next to them were two muscular figures, R Gain, a level SSS Danger zombie boss, and R Goo, also a level SS Danger zombie boss. Slightly shorter, but with a fierce face, was Varmint, a level SAS Danger zombie boss. And finally, the most well-groomed among them was Xiao Hei, also a level SSS Danger zombie boss. When they saw him, they all lined up and shouted loudly, "Hail the Great King!" Jiang-si walked past Argu and stuck a piece of paper on his chest. "Argu, you're wanted by the humans again." He honestly admitted his fault and said, "Sorry, Great King. When I see humans, my body goes out of control." Then he walked over to his seat and sat down. It was an old sofa placed amid the pile of debris. Xiao Hei spoke up. "Although our zombie territory is expanding endlessly to avoid humans, our clan has moved to several different capitals." Varmint raised his saw and said aggressively, "Boss, let us loose so we can work." It's been a long time since we've seen blood. My chainsaw is already rusty. Of course, Jiangxi did not allow it, and said, "Do you understand anything? Humans are very terrifying." Suddenly, a loud engine sound roared above them. What is that noise? A fighter jet was flying straight along its path in the sky. The girl with full, smooth, fair breasts was sulking, waiting for something. Yulang, with a serious face, stood on the flying ship, arms crossed, observing the screen ahead. She silently looked at the screen displaying the coordinates in front of her. The crew member in the cabin reported to the captain, "All equipment is functioning normally. Everything is ready for action." Inside the large ship was a nuclear warhead. Yulang quietly asked, "Where is my family?" Inside the large ship is a nuclear warhead that has been activated and is expected to explode in 20 minutes. Jiang Sai was still sitting leisurely in the base when he also looked up in surprise. The girl quietly smiled in satisfaction. Very good. Then in an instant, she shifted to an expression of extreme hatred. "Come here, you disgusting zombie." That plane had gotten close enough to the city for them to notice. Varmint exclaimed the moment he saw it. "It's a human." He was very aggressive and immediately demanded, "Jiangxi boss, let me go/them." Jiangxi stopped him. "No, you guys don't get close to the humans or you'll lose control. Take the civilians away first." He was also in a serious state when making his decision. "I'll go there and see how it is." Yulang was still calm and contacted to her ground squad, asking if they had received any news. There were 3 trucks carrying people traveling on the stone road. "You guys have only 20 minutes to search for survivors." They were fully equipped with weapons and armor, according to the village chief's instructions. "After 20 minutes, you have to immediately withdraw." One person responded briefly, "Understood." A person holding a sword stepped out from the tail of the aircraft. "Xiao Wu, stay alert. Be ready to take orders at any time. Watch out for the undead boss appearing." He looked very cool standing there in the sky, bathed in the light of the dawn. After receiving the order, Xiao Wu quickly replied, "Understood." His mouth revealed a smile behind the mask. "Please rest assured, if the boss zombies show up, I will cut it down." The zombies in the city were attracted by the light and quickly rushed over. The doctor was also standing in front of a larger and more detailed screen. The boy with the mole on his head gently lifted his glasses and smiled happily. "Brother Fei, it seems like he is from the Extraordinary Academy." He was quite interested in this, so he smiled and said, "Then let's have a round with them." The red button was pressed down with great force. Immediately, a cage full of ordinary people was dropped down despite their cries for help. "Someone help us." As soon as the zombies saw the living humans, they rushed in like a flood. The soldiers below quickly received orders through the communicator squad. "Attention survivors spotted. Move in to assist immediately." The commander nodded in agreement. Then they set up support for their guns and began firing with countless bullets. Hiao Hiao was in the middle of fighting when she suddenly stopped after seeing something strange. "What the heck? Why isn't that zombie dying?" 2 small zombies clung to each other in fear amid the heavy gunfire. Jiangxi stepped forward and raised both arms to shield them from the bullets. The sniper aimed directly at him and said, "No zombie is immortal. If one seems to be, it's only because the caliber isn't big enough." This time the bullet was larger and flew a long distance toward them. Then it exploded just seconds later, causing smoke and flames to erupt violently. Thick white smoke spread all around, quickly covering the figures inside. Suddenly a soldier came over and showed them a piece of paper. "Sir, did we just shoot the wrong person? I think he's the extraordinary guy who's been showing up a lot lately." Inside was an image of Jiangxi carrying an airplane that masked Zombie Boy, who always helps everyone. The other person grabbed it and shouted loudly, "We shot the wrong guy!" But Jiangxi's body remained completely intact after that attack. He simply turned his head calmly to look at the flying ship as if nothing had happened. At that moment, Yulang noticed a red alert zone appearing on the map. She immediately ordered the crew at the tail of the ship to move. "Xiaowu Zone B has a zombie boss sighting. Message received. Leave it to me." Xiaowu immediately let his body fall freely from above. Dr. Jiming stood silently in front of his advanced screen. His subordinate kept typing on the keyboard. "They're about to evacuate the civilians. Looks like we can't underestimate them." Jiming softly whispered a command. "Then let's add a little more pressure." A sly smile spread across his subordinate's face, making his glasses flash brightly. "Understood." Outside, the horde of zombies was still gathering in large numbers. One zombie suddenly showed strange signs as the skin on his face was torn apart and his arm instantly swelled with uncontrollable bulging muscles. From a small zombie, the mutation caused his body to grow massive and completely transform into a ferocious monster. Jiangxi, in another location, suddenly sensed a strange surge of power. The mutated zombie let out a piercing roar. Xiaowu was still letting himself fall from the flying ship. A message came through the radio to the soldiers on the ground. "All squads, attention, a zombie boss has appeared in Zone B." Hiao Hiao quickly responded, "Understood. We're heading there now." Suddenly their captain dashed off urgently, making her cry out in confusion, "Captain!" Jiangxi was still standing there staring at them in confusion. He quickly grabbed Jiangxi's body and pulled him away just in time. Saving one life is more valuable than building 7 pagodas. The captain carried Jiangxi back from the horde of zombies. Hiao Hiao and her teammates stared in shock, their eyes wide with disbelief. The captain then roughly threw him into the back of the vehicle. He also urged his subordinate to get behind the wheel, "Hurry up and drive, or are you waiting for me to reward you first?" Their vehicle spun around a few times, then quickly sped off. After a moment of chaos, they gradually settled down and drove steadily along the empty road. At that moment, Xiao Xiao finally spoke up. "You're the masked zombie guy who often helps people, right? I'm really curious, why do you always wear that mask?" Jiang Se grew uneasy and stammered, unsure how to respond. "Well, this." Meanwhile, the other soldiers still on the battlefield were confused and lowered their guns. "What does it want to do?" The mutated zombie grabbed the vehicle tightly and lifted it up. Suddenly, the entire bus was hurled toward them, shocking the entire squad and putting them in danger. Fortunately, Xiao Wu appeared just in time, stepping into the gap of light before them. The vehicle was sliced in half with incredible speed, splitting apart to both sides, and he stood in the middle swinging his sword, looking really cool. The two halves of the vehicle flew several meters apart before slowly coming to a stop on the ground. The soldiers cheered happily when they saw him. "That's Xiao Wu from the Extraordinary Academy. Great, now we have hope." Xiao Wu took out his second sword, straightened up and declared, "Everyone evacuate the civilians first. Leave this place to me." Hiao Hiao and her team were evacuating the civilians there one by one, urging, "Don't rush." The captain asked the soldier beside him, "What's the situation ahead?" The soldier reported back, "A zombie boss has appeared, but Xiao Wu from the Swordsmanship Club is already on the scene." At that moment, Jiang Se looked toward the road and quietly felt a familiar presence. It was the voice of Little Nine. Hiao Hiao was still busy with her task, constantly reminding everyone, "Don't push, we are not zombies." She suddenly remembered something and turned around, but there was no one behind her anymore, leaving her stunned. At that moment, Xiao Wu was calmly confronting the zombie. "Does it hurt?" The zombie screamed again, its dark mouth opening wide. Suddenly, it lunged at its enemy with great fury. Xiao Wu gently pushed the sword blade out of the sheath. Then he slid past its body to slash gracefully, sheathing his sword backwards. "I will help you find peace." His figure shimmered faintly in the white void, as if an incredibly fast action had just taken place. Countless slash marks crisscrossed like bright threads, unleashed within a brief moment. Xiao Wu slid lightly across the ground and raised his sword high without a single drop of blood left behind. The massive body of the zombie stiffened under the critical blows. Then it exploded, the horrific scene darkening the entire area. Afterwards, the zombie could not escape its fate and collapsed heavily to the ground. Xiao Wu gently sheathed his sword. He felt satisfied after finishing it off, thinking he could rest soon. At this moment, Jiang Se's footsteps were getting closer and closer to Xiao Wu. He immediately noticed the movement and looked surprised. The small figure of Jiang Se made him momentarily mistake him for a zombie. Half of the zombie's body had been slashed off and could not recover. Only Jiang Se had a sorrowful expression on his face as he watched his friend. The control side of the airship was happily announcing to everyone the newly received news that the zombie boss had been taken down by Xiao Wu. Yulang also smiled and said, "Well done. When he returns, give him the top credit." Below the city, Jiang Se's voice grew lower as he comforted the fallen body of his friend. "It wasn't your fault. I'm sorry, we were the ones who lost control." Xiao Wu heard what he said and immediately became agitated. "We!" He directly slashed at Jiang Se without hesitation, boldly declaring, "Zombies must die." The girl observed the information reported by the computer and exclaimed, "Wait a minute, another zombie boss has been detected underground. There's still one left." The man next to her replied calmly, "Why panic? Don't worry with Xiao Wu, their taking it down is a simple matter." But this time she furrowed her brows in disbelief. "Xiao Wu is already gone." Yulang also immediately turned around in shock. What? At this moment, Xiao Wu's face was bruised, scratched, and covered in red blood. He had been stripped completely and hung on a street lamp, his entire body exposed. She spoke with a hint of concern, saying that Xiao Wu's vitality had diminished. He had already been seriously injured. The man was just as shocked as they were. The evacuation of the civilians still hadn't been completed. This unexpected incident made Yulang stand still for a moment, lost in thought. The more she thought about it, the angrier she became, and she let out a furious huff. Without waiting any longer, Yulang's figure quickly faded into the cabin of the ship. She directly rushed downward to the surprise of everyone above. The president inside the cabin hurriedly tapped commands on the screen and shouted, "President." The people inside the cabin hurriedly typed commands on the screen and shouted, "President, you're acting too rashly. We're not ready yet." But Yulang, clearly agitated, responded sharply, "I want to see just how powerful it really is." From high up in the sky, a tiny flash of white light appeared. Jiang Se also just turned his head to take notice of it. At this moment, Yulang had gotten very close to him and drew the sword from her waist. The young man was still gaping in surprise at being approached by the girl and hadn't yet managed to strike back. Then the blade shattered in an instant, turning it into a pile of worthless scrap metal. Yulang's eyes widened as she stared at the strange phenomenon unfolding right before her. Her hair was still flying upward in the wind due to her extreme speed. Jiang Se looked confused as he glanced at the person beside him, landing on the ground with the shattered sword. She broke into a cold sweat in fear. "What the hell is this thing?" Yulang immediately backed away from the target to stay safe. The girl on the airship connected to the president via walkie-talkie and asked with concern, "President, you're infiltrating alone like this very hard for us to provide support. Are you okay?" Although she had just taken a heavy shock, Yu Lang still spoke boldly. How could anything happen to me? At that moment, Jiangxi hurriedly raised both hands, awkwardly trying to make peace. I already apologized in advance. But in her eyes, he seemed even more suspicious after saying that he could even speak human language. Truly a freak, if that's the case. Another sword was drawn by her, and on its blade was engraved a line of blood-red text. Yu Lang slowly ran each of her fingers along the shiny blade, preparing for her opening strike. Jiangxi grew a bit flustered upon seeing her ready to strike. I haven't even finished talking yet. The president responded while charging forward. Go tell the king of hell yourself. With no other option, he had to quickly leap away from where he was standing. Yu Lang swung her attack, but it only struck Jiangxi's shadow. She quickly reacted by gliding away. This time she flipped backward, preparing for a surprise attack. In Jiangxi's eyes, the whole world seemed to flip upside down, and she was the only one staring at him with a gaze full of killing intent. She spun around and unleashed a wide-range strike that spread across the entire street. Red blade cleave. From rocks to streetlights, everything was sliced apart like cake. Jiangxi easily leaned backward and dodged it. But Yu Lang's momentum didn't stop. She slashed straight through, cutting across multiple skyscrapers in the city. He stared blankly at the sky, looking rather unserious. Yu Lang became even more enraged by him, furious that such a freak dared to mock her. She continued to vanish swiftly into the air. The soldiers had by now reached them and were carrying Xiao Wu away. Hurry up! He hadn't yet overcome his shock and started foaming at the mouth, forcing them to struggle to fan him. The people on the airship hurriedly shouted, President, all the civilians have been evacuated. Hurry, return now. Efforts to contact you are ongoing. President, can you hear me? But at this moment, Yu Lang and Jiangxi were engaged in an uneven battle, constantly shifting locations. He looked quite happy soaring and darting around the city. He even struck a hip-hop pose. The president clenched her long sword tightly and glared, You think you can run? They rushed down below a skyscraper and sneaked into a very narrow alley. Jiangxi, both startled and innocent, asked, I'm not running. Am I supposed to stay and wait for you to slash me? After saying that, he jumped back onto the rooftop and kicked a car to speed off. Yu Lang clicked her tongue and then sheathed her sword. This time she focused more, concentrating her strength into her legs. Iaido level 2. The engine at the back of her calves activated, releasing clouds of white smoke. The entire energy system was activated at full capacity, and the lights changed from green to a blazing, furious red. She directly dashed in a straight line far away from the rooftop of that building. Jiangxi was still hovering in mid-air, unaware. Yu Lang took a single step and was right behind him within seconds. She gritted her teeth and fiercely swung down a powerful strike to release all her anger. After that strike, she quickly landed safely on the ground. Jiangxi also fell and landed with a thud, like a sack of salt. Yu Lang sheathed her sword and said seriously, It's done. She immediately touched her ear to report mission completed. Okay, we'll come pick you up. Jie Ming's subordinate also reported to him, Brother Meng, they've already evacuated all the civilians. Sly smile suddenly curled up at the corner of his lips. Don't we have a spy? Even from a very far distance, Jie Ming only needed to give a gentle order, use it. The evacuated civilians were now cheering and celebrating. This is great. The president is still the best. The main cockpit of the spaceship was tense and silent. The pilot suddenly paid attention to his colleague. The mysterious man beside him lifted the cover of a red button. Then without hesitation, he pressed it, causing the pilot to shout in panic. What are you doing? The large bomb on the hull of the ship immediately started counting down and gradually became revealed. It followed the command and fell straight down onto the city below with heavy weight. The others on the ship were still shouting loudly and laughing happily. We can go home now. However, the two pilots caught the saboteur and quickly reported to them. Don't celebrate yet, there's a spy among us. The warhead has been launched down below. All of them immediately froze, waiting to process the information in their minds. Then they widened their eyes and dropped their jaws in shock. Yu Lang below also heard the panic in their voices. President, do you hear that? We have a spy. The warhead has been launched down below. You need to return quickly. She then looked up at the sky with astonishment. What? The large warhead aimed straight at the city below and kept plummeting down. The girl announced to the entire ship, Everyone attention, collision, open the hatch. Try to lower altitude so the president can jump up. Yu Lang then activated the engine on her leg, but it didn't work. She looked at the faint smoke coming from it and wondered what was wrong. The people on the plane hurriedly urged her. He said, President, you still haven't returned. It's almost too late. She also really wanted to, but could only frown and say, My legs can't move. Yu Lang slumped down and looked at the body of Jiangxi, still stuck in the ground. I already used up all my strength to crush that deformed one to death earlier. Yu Lang also tried to remove the device to check it, but got into an even tougher situation. Damn it, wasn't it charged before I came? Suddenly, her sharp instincts sounded an alarm, making her quickly turn around. Who? Jiangxi had somehow crawled out of the ground and was now leaning in close to her face, staring at her. The president was suddenly pulled away by him helplessly. Jiangxi spun her around on the ground like a rope, making her scream loudly, You. Then following the force of momentum, the girl was thrown straight up into the sky by him. Then Yu Lang landed precisely in the tail of the plane. Her subordinates quickly ran over President. They surrounded her constantly. Worried, are you all right? Hurry, help the president get some rest. However, what truly concerned her was Jiang Si, you deformed freak. That warhead had also gotten very close to his city. It was terrifyingly large and pitch black. He stood beneath the road looking up in deep thought. After that, Jiang Si frowned and raised one leg, getting ready to push off. With a loud thud, the ground cracked beneath him, pushed off, and he soared into the sky. He exhaled a hot breath from his mouth to gather more strength. At this moment, nearly all of his strength was focused on soaring upward. The warhead, meanwhile, continued to plunge toward the ground as expected. Facing it head-on was Jiang Si, straining himself as he surged upward from the city. He reached out his hand, trying to make contact with it. Yu Lang and everyone on the plane gasped in shock. What Jiming and his subordinates also watched closely with curiosity. The soldier was fanning Xiao Wu and also Hiao Hiao, and the captain was staring wide-eyed. A massive explosion occurred on the surface. Its impact was so great, it seemed about to destroy everything. The terrifying pressure and piercing sound made Yu Lang and the ordinary people stagger. Outside the earth, they could even see the massive plume of smoke from that bomb. After it had completed its mission, the president looked up in confusion. The fire merged with the smoke and lit up an entire area inside the city. The old and ruined structures were almost completely buried in that pile of ashes. She frowned in shock, as well as in anticipation of some kind of miracle. Below there, everything was covered in layers of dust and rubble. A lone foot stepped onto the ground calmly. Jiang Si was almost completely burned through his clothes, yet his muscular body remained the same. He even scratched his own butt and muttered, "Seems like it didn't work." He scratched his butt very calmly. After witnessing those scenes, Jiming turned around and left, saying, "I'm out of here." His subordinates curiously looked at the strange screen. Why is there still something moving in the nuclear blast zone? Dr. Jiming wasn't as surprised or excited as him and said, "We've been fighting this extraordinary academy for a long time. If not this time, then next time." He didn't say anything more and simply followed got it. On the academy team's helicopter, the entrance had already been sealed shut earlier. Yu Lang sat in a corner and fell into silence. Her colleagues only dared to stand at a distance and look at her president. What's wrong with her? That person with a suggestive look in their eyes explained, "Think about it. Spending your whole life fighting zombies and now being saved by one. How would you feel?" The girl from the airship walked over to Yu Lang and carrying a datasheet. "It seems you were mistaken." She immediately held it out in front of Yu Lang and added, "This person is not a zombie." The face on the screen was clearly Jiang Si. The president probably doesn't watch the news. He's the masked man, the one who likes wearing a zombie mask, and has been very active in our society lately. Yu Lang clenched the device with both hands, crushing it into pieces. The next morning, a peaceful day arrived once more with the dazzling sunlight of the sun. But the people out on the streets today saw something strange, leaving them completely stunned. Wherever that person went, they caused shock, sending the entire area into a state of panic. Inside the phone booth, that person stepped in and spoke, "Hello." Varmint spoke energetically and non-stop over the phone. "Boss, don't worry, we've all evacuated safely. Most are fine and we're looking for the next place to stay." He replied gently, "They already know. Once everything is settled, I'll come find everyone." Outside his apartment building, daily life continued as usual. Jiang Si returned to his apartment, wearing only a pair of torn pants. Luckily, no one was around. He muttered the unlock code to himself, then tapped it on the screen. 741741747471. Over at the academy's side, they had just discovered something, prompting the girl to exclaim, "President, come, take a look at this." Both of them looked at the screen at the same time. Jiang Si also suddenly turned around and faced them. The president and the girl both darkened their expressions in shock. The young man, completely unaware, entered his home as if nothing had happened. He played the video again for motivation. "Time to lift weights. All right, everyone follow me. Raise your arms, then lift your thighs." On his table was a photo taken with his rowdy juniors, giving off a very cozy feeling. Jiang Si smiled to himself and thought, "I wonder if everyone's settled down yet. I'll be back soon." Suddenly, Zeeling boldly kicked open his door, making him yell out loud. She brought along countless people in black and ordered them kitchen, bathroom, bedroom. Take everything, pots, pans, whatever, take it all. Banholap tuktan rabat, jau thu thap, moi thu trong hatong tu, wang fu nhan ka sengoi, la I anhta tu tren san, nha hetlon hoang, soka changoi, mon lam gi. A blank sheet of paper was suddenly held out in front of the young man. Yu Lang stood before him and introduced herself. "We are from the Extraordinary Academy. We're here to inform you that you have been accepted." She spoke as if making an announcement, not asking for his opinion. "Starting today, you are a member of our academy." Then she pointed at the young man and glanced over at the person in black beside him. That person immediately stepped forward and pulled Jiang Si up, leaving him in utter confusion. "Wait!" He struggled against them, but failed. "What do you want? Can zombies go to school too? A human is a human. Why pretend to be a zombie? Take me away." So Yu Lang took him along with his belongings, and together they left the apartment building. The belongings were loaded into the vehicle, while outside it was very chaotic due to the sudden event. Hiao Hiao, standing beside her, suddenly asked with concern, "President, the academy is very strict about recruitment. Accepting someone on our own like this doesn't seem right. Besides, since academy housing is allocated based on labor, he won't have a place to stay there." She also stared thoughtfully at her team as they were packing up their belongings. Then Yulang made a very decisive decision. Let him stay with me for now. The people in black were very professional, urging each other to quickly move all the belongings inside and put them properly into the bedroom. In just one day, everything was neatly arranged, so they quickly finished their work and left. Two representatives of the team bowed to them before leaving. Now Jiangxi, wearing only his shorts, knelt down, facing Yulang, unsure of what to do. He kept sweating nervously while the girl watched him intently for a long time without saying a word. To break the silence, Jiangxi had to ask, "So I'm staying here from now on, where will I sleep?" Ziling replied coldly, "If not here, then where?" Her face darkened as if threatening, "Do you want to sleep with me?" The young man was terrified and quickly denied, No, I never thought that he even imagined the scene, and thought to himself, zombies sleeping with humans, this world is crazy. The president continued, "You'll sleep in the guest room right next door." Jiangxi timidly stepped back and whispered his secret. "Actually, you're all wrong, I'm not human." Yulang suddenly touched her strange leg and curled it up. Out of curiosity and wonder, he also looked up to take a look. Suddenly, she completely detached her leg joint, causing him to flinch and exclaim, Your leg." Ziling did the same with the other leg and replied, "I cut them off myself. Got a problem with that?" The young man quickly shook his head. No, not at all." She frowned, seemingly unwilling to talk about it, but still decided to share. The story took place in a house engulfed in flames. When I was little, a zombie outbreak broke out in our village. 2 zombies rushed at me like mad, terrifying me. My parents had turned into zombies and bit my leg. Back then, my tiny hands could only grip the kitchen knife tightly to survive. I didn't just cut off my own legs. Tears streamed down the child's face out of fear, but she still had to act. I didn't just cut off my own legs. I also struck down my parents, who had turned into zombies. As she told the story, she glared at him. "That's why I hate zombies. I make sure to kill every single one I see." Jiang Sai was about to say something, but immediately fell silent, not daring to make a sound. After finishing her story, she finally asked, "What was it you wanted to say earlier?" The young man, panicking, waved his hands frantically. No, I didn't say anything. You didn't hear a thing." To avoid getting stabbed on the spot, he quickly changed the subject. "Let's change the topic, okay? That extraordinary academy you mentioned earlier, what exactly is it?" Being asked something right in her area of expertise, Yulang softened a bit and replied, "It's an academy specialized in training how to handle zombies. Their academy building is incredibly modern, with intricate architecture. It's been over 1,000 years since the zombie outbreak and the end of the world. 2 centuries after the outbreak, to ensure humanity's survival, our ancestors founded this school. The students there are all either geniuses or monsters," she explained. "It's a school dedicated to dealing with zombies. They train all kinds of talents to handle zombies." Hearing that, Jiangxi suddenly remembered. 2 centuries after the zombie outbreak, I remember when it first started, I had just turned into a zombie. He sat there in shock as he realized something about himself. "I'm 1,000 years old." Yulang reminded him, "Don't forget to register tomorrow. I got you in through the back door, you know." A sudden thought popped into his mind. "I can't go." "No way." Knowing he'd think that, she added firmly, "Don't even think about running. This isn't some ordinary school. If you register and skip out, they'll launch a full investigation on you." She moved in her wheelchair and added, "Also, my name is Yu Lang. Tomorrow just have Hiao take you there." You two knew each other before. Jiangxi looked confused. "We knew each other before." He wondered to himself, who is Hiao? The one who left him confused was the girl with twin ponytails. She stood tall in front of the academy, exuding an air of confidence and strength. Outside the entrance was vast with inscriptions carved into every structure lining the pathway. Hiao cheerfully greeted him. "Hey there, masked guy. How you doing?" Jiangxi looked at her and asked, "By the way, who exactly are you?" The girl immediately shouted, "We met before during that burning truck explosion, remember?" He suddenly remembered and gestured with his hands. "But I remember back then, you were just this tiny." She frowned at him and tried to calm herself down. Hiao, you need to build a good relationship with your future classmate. He's an idiot. After that, Hiao didn't argue anymore and walked straight inside. "Let's go in. We've got a test." Jiangxi was surprised. A test. They stepped into the vast school courtyard, where at the moment only the 2 of them were present. Taking the chance, he gently nudged Hiao's arm and asked, "We have to take a test to get into this school." She replied, "Of course, what kind of school doesn't have tests? They'll train you in basic zombie fighting skills for a week, then you'll take the exam." The one who left him confused was the girl with twin ponytails. She stood tall in front of the academy, exuding an air of confidence and strength. Outside the entrance was vast with inscriptions carved into every structure lining the pathway. Hiao cheerfully greeted him. "Hey there, masked guy. How you doing?" Jiangxi looked at her and asked, "By the way, who exactly are you?" The girl immediately shouted, "We met before during that burning truck explosion, remember?" He suddenly remembered and gestured with his hands. "But I remember back then, you were just this tiny." She frowned at him and tried to calm herself down. Hiao, you need to build a good relationship with your future classmate. He's an idiot. After that, Hiao didn't argue anymore and walked straight inside. "Let's go in. We've got a test." Jiangxi was surprised. A test. They stepped into the vast school courtyard, where at the moment only the 2 of them were present. Taking the chance, he gently nudged Hiao Hiao's arm and asked, "We have to take a test to get into this school." She replied, "Of course, what kind of school doesn't have tests? They'll train you in basic zombie fighting skills for a week, then you'll take the exam." The girl even recalled some important details. For example, the world record for the 100-meter sprint is 9:58 seconds. Using that as an example, she explained to Jiangxi, "You have to run it in 9:57 seconds to qualify." He nodded, pretending to understand. "Ah, so extraordinary academy, is that mean?" The two of them stepped onto the elevator. When it was their turn, Hiao Hiao asked, "So what do you think it means?" Jiangxi shrugged and answered honestly, "I thought it was a mental hospital." Above the white wall hung a red banner with bold white lettering. Down in the courtyard, thousands of people had already been gathered. Everyone wore a serious expression. If they weren't privileged elites, then they were geniuses in some field. They joined the crowd. "We're here." Hiao Hiao climbed onto Jiangxi's shoulders to get a better view. "Damn it, I can't see anything from down here." The person in front of her suddenly turned around and insulted them. "Shut up, trash, like you should stay in the back," with her fiery temper. She snapped back at him. "What are you being so aggressive for?" Jiangxi looked up and said, "I don't get it. I've lifted airplanes in human zones a few times before. Shouldn't that mean I don't need to take this test?" She patiently replied, "You're overthinking it. A lot of people here can lift airplanes. This place was established by the government back then, and all its staff were classified." And she added one more important thing. "Also, people here don't watch the news." At that moment, a person with one missing leg stepped forward and shouted, "Silence, all of you!" He cleared his throat with a few coughs to test his voice. Then Chen Shen stood sternly on the high platform and spoke down to the crowd. "Hello everyone, I'm your examiner for this round. You can call me Captain Chen Shen of the sports department." First came his welcoming speech. "It's been 800 years since this school was founded. In that time we've trained all kinds of exceptional talents. At one point, to defend against an assault from the Zombie King, our ancestors even split an entire mountain in half. He also got straight to the Academy's expectations. I don't expect you all to pass. In the old days, all it took was for you to..." Suddenly someone shouted from the crowd, Captain Chen." Jiangxi timidly raised his hand and said, "I have a question. What if a zombie manages to sneak into the academy?" Chen Shen responded firmly, "Of course we tear it into 8 pieces and hang the zombie's head at the school gate as a warning to everyone. Also neuter it." Neuter. He still didn't quite grasp the meaning until the examiner smiled broadly and said bluntly, "Cut off that little bird of his young man." In his mind, Jiangxi imagined the scene of his little buddy getting chopped off, and the thought made his face go pale in pain. After the brief speech, the sky remained clear, with the dazzling rays of the morning sun shining down. The referee stood to the side and gave the signal 100-meter sprint test, "Get ready." Though still a bit confused, Jiangxi got into position just like everyone else. A puff of air burst from the small starting gun go. As soon as the referee finished speaking, the students shot forward like a gust of wind, nearly sweeping him off his feet. One exceptional individual even overtook Jiangxi, confidently leading the entire group at the front. They ran lap after lap around the schoolyard until the announcement came, "Wu Shenshushu, 100 meters in 3 seconds passed." The young man immediately came to a sharp stop after reaching his goal. Jiangxi kept running while staring blankly in amazement. The students then brought out countless scarecrows for the next round firearms testing. Chen Shen stood right behind him and shouted, "Gun training is the most basic subject in zombie combat. If you're good at it, you'll eat zombies. If not, zombies will eat you." Jiangxi was overwhelmed inside, swept along by the rapid pace of events. "I was suddenly dragged into this school, now learning how to fight zombies every day. Aside from zombie theory, there's all kinds of training too." Next to him, a fair and slender hand lifted a pistol. Hiao Hiao covered her eyes and still managed to fire off countless bullets. The bullets swiftly shot through the air, hitting the scarecrows one after another. They flew wildly in all directions, yet every shot precisely struck the scarecrows' heads, taking them all down. The girl smugly pulled off her blindfold with a satisfied smile. Hiao Hiao firearms test passed. Jiangxi was once again left stunned, mouth wide open in disbelief. He looked at the crazy one next to him, who was grabbing the scarecrow's body and shouting loudly. Sweat poured from Jiangxi's body, soaking him completely. Chen Shen remained standing under the sun, directing them. Next event, weight pushing. Some strained themselves trying to lift the weights, while others handled it with ease. 80 meters just at the standard 100 meters or more passed. The students began launching their weights one by one. Depending on the person, their weights either passed the distant white line or fell short. XXX passed, XXY not passed. Chen Shen raised his voice and called out, "Next group." Jiangxi tried his best to act normal as he walked down the path that had somehow led him to this whole madhouse. "I need to keep a low profile. I'll try to suppress my strength," he thought. In truth, the examiner Chen Shen had been secretly observing him the entire time. He held a datasheet in his hand. Jiangxi height: 182 meters, weight 72 kilograms, 100-meter sprint in 9:57 seconds. All categories meet the basic standards. But Chen Shen thought Captain Yu Lang said he's extremely strong. He looked up again, suspicion growing in his eyes. Could it be that guy's holding back on purpose? The sky above them remained clear and blue as ever. "Get ready." The person leaned their entire body backward to build momentum for the javelin throw. Then he hurled it with full force, sending it soaring high into the air. The sharp javelin cut through the air, heading straight toward its target. It pierced through the scarecrow, dragging it along as it flew. Jiang Sai was startled in surprise as well. Though the javelin pierced through 3 or 4 scarecrows, its flight path continued unbroken, and it flew straight into the signboard along the road. The nearby residents looked up with puzzled expressions. Chen Shen checked his small watch and announced 32 kilometers aimed perfectly at the target. The person walked into the gathering area, while Jiang Si stepped out. Wu Shengshushu javelin throw valid next participant. Wu Shengshushu remained arrogant, casting a sharp glance directly at Jiang Si. Jiang Si picked up his javelin as well. Zhongxi took his stance just like everyone else. But this time Chen Shen suddenly called out to stop him. Wait. The nearby students also turned their attention toward him, drawn by Chen Shen's voice. The examiner approached and directly addressed him. Your name is Jiang Si, right? Did Captain Yu Lang introduce you here? He held the screen and questioned him. She said you're very strong, but your results are only average. Do you really have the ability, or are you deliberately messing with me? The people in the crowd turned their curious faces toward them once again. Suddenly Chen Shen recalled an earlier matter startling Jiang Si. You were the one who asked me that question before, right? Everyone here is eager to show their full strength. He leaned in close to Jiang Si's face and whispered, making him tremble. Could it be that you're a zombie? Panicked, he quickly waved his arms and flailed his legs, shouting, No, I'm human, I'm human. Chen Shen tossed the thin screen back at him. Good, I want to see all of your strength. He returned to his place and said, I'm not expecting you to throw 32 kilometers like that guy earlier. If you can surpass 3 kilometers within 1 minute, that will be considered valid. With a stern glare warning him, Chen Shen emphasized, If you don't meet the standard, it means you lack real ability, but tried to deceive Captain Yu Lang. I will treat you as a spy and have you neutered. Jiang Si fell silent, not daring to utter a single word. His mind was filled with conflicting thoughts. Although he couldn't remember much, the people who had hunted him long ago were from this academy, right? He didn't want to become a mere lamp oil or an eternal engine. Then Jiang Si calmly thought, I'll throw as far as I can. Jiang Si quickly think, why have you survived until today? Wu Shengshu folded his arms, waiting for the person he had just looked down on to prove himself. Hiao also attentively watched him. Jiang Si took a deep breath to build momentum, then gently raised the sharp spear. He parted his lips and took a breath in. Remembering the scene of himself training hard in the gym gave him even more motivation. Jiang Si's eyes burned red like flames. Fragments of memories from when he was still weak and skin and bone came flooding back. Now he just needed one stomp to sink the entire surface of the ground. Everything around Jiang Si began to blur due to moving too fast. Wu Shengshu, who just now looked cool and cold, was now blown away, terrified out of his mind. The full-force throw from Jiang Si was unleashed. The spear flew straight out into outer space and pierced the cluster of satellites there. It continued to streak past at the speed of light, destroying several more. And finally, it landed on the surface of the moon. The students there were blown away as if they had just endured a powerful storm. Jiang Si still stood on the ground even though the area behind him had been completely torn up. Chen Shen gaped in shock and exclaimed, Damn! The moon remained silent and continued orbiting as usual. But at this moment, a flash of light appeared right in its center. A large round hole was gouged out, and a tiny image of Earth could be seen through the damage. Jiang Si's eyes still burned with fierce determination, and the muscles all over his body bulged, straining against his shirt. The more unfortunate ones began to fall from above to the ground. Jiang Si's body was still leaning forward, surrounded by a white mist. He gently lifted his face to look up at the moon above, which stood motionless in the sky, facing him as if questioning him. After a while, the young man gradually calmed down, then stood still, staring blankly at life. Chen Shen and the others were still in shock as they looked at him. Hiao was extremely excited and ran to him. Did you see that even the temple official froze just now? Wow, you're amazing, she hurriedly asked. How far did you throw just now? Jiang Si scratched his head and said, I don't really know. I just threw it randomly into the sky. The meteorite in outer space was still floating after being separated from the moon. Both of them drifted aimlessly in outer space. The hole on the moon would never fully heal, leaving a large gap through which the entire Earth could be seen. Jiang Si held the information sheet and asked, The exam is over, can I go home now? Hiao was amazed and said, Are you joking? What is this? Later you became the leader's man. She waved her arms and legs, trying to exaggerate her words. Do you know how powerful the group leader is? Jiang Si obviously didn't know, so a question mark appeared above his head. Hiao then showed off the terrifying image of Ziling, using Ziling, the group leader of the Blade Squad, as an example. She not only commands the army in her region, but can also deploy tanks, planes, and artillery at will. She even has the authority to use nuclear warheads. But the real person is sitting in the observation deck looking at the city through the window. She manages a large city with 35 million residents. The mayor is just a tool for managing the lives of the city's people. She is the true mayor. Jiang Si wasn't too surprised after hearing that. He said, All right, I have my own city now, huh? After discussing for a while, they moved to a new place, the biotechnology group. Around them and on the table were filled with test tubes and various strange medicines. This is where the very energetic girl, Hiao Hiao, introduced to him as the biotechnology group, a place specializing in weapon research for us. You can also call it the logistics department. Jiangxi suddenly glanced at his hand. On the table there was a picture of a very happy family. This is Dr. Ji Ming. We all call him the Minister of Logistics. He was formerly the leader of the biotechnology group. They paid even more attention to the man with the large glasses. Ever since his wife passed away in order to fulfill her wishes, he had immersed himself in using humans and the undead for illegal and twisted biological research. In the end, he was erased from the Academy's records and placed on the wanted list. He was even given a kill-on-sight order by the Academy. Inside the tech room, there was another girl. "Hey, you two doing all right? Got a new classmate. Hiao Hiao, you passed the exam already." Hiao Hiao immediately responded with a bright smile. "That's right." Jiangxi, not knowing anyone there, grew curious. "Who is she?" Hiao Hiao quickly explained. "An orphan raised by Dr. Jie Ming in the past. She's currently the representative for the group leader." Then the girl pulled out a chair and sat down at the desk. "Come here. What kind of equipment do you two need?" Hiao Hiao exclaimed excitedly. "I need an outfit that can carry more weapons." She even imagined a bizarre mechanism for it, preferably the kind that could carry a whole spirit frame weapon under her crotch. The professor also accepted the new request. "Looks like Hiao Hiao is getting ready to join the gun group." "Of course," she replied. "I came to this school to follow the call of my heart. What about you, classmate?" She was silent for a moment, waiting. Jiangxi walked over and pointed at himself, asking me. As soon as she saw him, she shouted loudly, "Mom, zombies!" Hiao Hiao forced a smile and explained, "You misunderstood. He's not a zombie, he's just wearing a zombie mask." The professor immediately shouted at the girl, "Do you think I'm stupid, or do you have eyes growing on your eyebrows? That's clearly a zombie." Hiao Hiao's eyes shone brightly as she insisted, "Once again, I'm not lying to you. I even saw his face just now." The professor put on his glasses with a worried look and said, "Really fine. I'll believe Hiao Hiao this once." He stood still like a statue in his spot after trembling uncontrollably. She calmly asked Jiangxi, "Do you have any requests for weapons?" He happily replied, "I have no requests, but every time I finish work I always come back naked. It would be great to have an outfit that can't be damaged." She listened, and her ears were bursting from confusion. Her computer screen was already open for work. "I get it. One person wants to carry more weapons and the other does not want to be naked." A wooden sign with the words Jian Hui clearly written hung above the sliding door. Xiao Wu was still shirtless, sitting perfectly still and upright in his spot. In front of him was the very relaxed figure of another girl. Xiao Wu began to tell the story. He was very strong. He recalled the moment when his father rushed forward. As he charged, he saw his vision darken. It wasn't even a full day, and then he found himself hung up on the utility pole like a piece of clothing. The girl grabbed the book on her face. "Did your group leader lose?" Xiao Wu asked anxiously. "I feel like our leader is no match for him." Then the girl stood up and placed her notebook on the table. She walked directly up to Xiao Wu. Her beautiful and charming face leaned close to him as she asked, "Tell me, what's his name?" Lan Qi remained silent and gave a gentle smile, causing Xiao Wu's face to flush bright red. Then she turned and walked away, signaling him to leave. The girl with that mysterious aura is Lan Qi, the leader of the sword group. The relationship between her and Ziling is not very good either. They have been long-time enemies. Ziling, the leader of the Blade Group, uses any means to recruit people, because the city managed by the Blade Group always has a larger population than the city of the Sword Group. Because of this population difference, the leader of the Sword Group wishes they could just give birth to people themselves. Xiao Wu quickly packed up and left, while silently wishing the other person good luck, Jiangxi. The Academy's classes had already started early as the sunlight outside grew increasingly bright. The teacher pointed his stick at the blackboard during the undead class. Besides eating humans, they also love chicken eggs. Mainly we exploit the zombies' preferences and their weak heads to create traps. Jiangxi diligently took notes on everything. Hiao Hiao curiously leaned over and asked him, "What are you doing?" The young man wrote while saying, "I'm copying this to tell everyone at home." She raised her eyebrows in confusion at his words. Everyone at home. At that moment, the school's loudspeaker interrupted the class, announcing, "Attention all students." They all looked up at the ceiling and listened as the announcement repeated, "All first-year students, please gather at the arena." Again, all first-year students, please gather at the arena. Hiao Hiao exclaimed, "That's strange, weren't we already assembled?" Then the students in the room quickly moved to the arena area. Inside the vast, empty courtyard, a group had already formed as the students gathered together. Jiang Se and Hiao Hiao each held an ice cream as they walked around the crowd. What were they planning to do? Ziling stepped ahead of them and reminded, "Be quiet. You two were introduced by me, so don't cause any trouble. This is a very important meeting." The clever girl Hiao Hiao suddenly turned to ask, "Jiangxi, can you still eat and drink while wearing the mask?" While he was still panicking to explain, not far from them, someone was watching. Lan Qi watched him intently while the person beside her spoke their thoughts. "The group leader is that guy. He doesn't seem very smart. He doesn't look that impressive either." She still showed no less interest and ordered him, "You step back first, I'll go greet him." The other person bowed and replied, "Yes." The door to the arena room also opened to welcome the last person inside. A lone man walked ahead, followed by countless other figures behind him. They gradually revealed themselves as advanced robots, while the one walking in the middle looked more like a human. The students instinctively bowed deeply and greeted Commander. Hiao Hiao grabbed Jiangxi's head and pulled it down. "What are you doing? Hurry and lower your head. That's the leader of the Life and Machinery group." The group walked through the crowd and brushed past the two new students. The commander looked at Lan Qi with annoyance and said, "What are you doing here? Don't cause trouble for me." She was very friendly and then left immediately. "All right," her subordinate questioned. "Isn't the group leader Jiangxi right here? Why haven't we seen him? What if he runs away?" Lan Qi raised her eyebrows and replied, "Compared to Jiangxi, the commander is still more important. I only respect the strong." The commander placed a hand on Ziling's shoulder and praised her for her hard work. She nodded and said, "It's just part of my duty." Jiangxi held his melting ice cream and exclaimed, "It feels weird. Something must be going on with Ziling from the Dao group." Hiao Hiao teased, "Are you jealous?" But he innocently replied, "I'm eating chicken eggs." At that moment he forgot what Hiao Hiao had said earlier about the commander being very formidable. She patiently reminded him, "Do you still remember the photo you saw before?" The commander was not an ordinary human. He was the last human in the group that Dr. Jie Ming from the biological science group researched among countless test subjects. Only he survived. The modern scenery around this city was also created single-handedly by the commander. After Dr. Jie Ming was hunted down, he founded the Life and Machinery group. Thanks to his strong power, the population of the city he managed grew to 50 million people. The people lived happily and peacefully under his protection. In the 10 years under his management, no sign of zombies ever appeared in the city. Even if a single zombie hair appeared, he would wipe it out. Jiang Sai was stunned into silence and dared not say anything more. The commander stood on the high platform and spoke loudly. "I will keep it brief. Although you are all first-year students, you are the elite of your fields. There is something I need your help with." The others also waited seriously. The crowd had settled down, so he gave the robot beside him the order, "Open the image." Its eye emitted a red beam that looked exactly like a projector. Behind him was the image of a familiar person. The face of that guy was bruised from being beaten. He is the spy we captured a few months ago because he unauthorizedly launched a nuclear warhead that almost killed one of our team leaders. Jiang Sai immediately became agitated because he was the one who launched the nuclear warhead to blow me up. All around him were countless whispers saying that this kind of person should be skinned alive. According to reliable sources, he is an important confidant of Dr. Jieming, the leader of the biological science team. His confidants are those zombies who lose control as soon as they see humans. Only now did he realize something. So it turns out that the apocalypse and the zombies are already over. Everything happening now is just because you all are fighting among yourselves. Here. Hieu also agreed with him, saying that it is true. After that she sighed in frustration. Truly they are just too idle. The commander continued to talk about their problem. "We have tried to make him reveal where Dr. Yiming is hiding, but it did not work. The students from level 2 to level 5 have all tried, but it was ineffective. It can be said that from tiger cages to branding and various forms of torture, they made him worn out, but none of it succeeded." The commander coldly declared that they had tried every possible way, but he still refused to speak. "I believe all of you are talents from different regions, as long as anyone can make him open his mouth and reveal the location of team leader Yiming." He put his hand in his pocket with an extremely calm attitude and said, "I will immediately promote that person to vice leader." The delusional students immediately exclaimed in admiration, "What, the new vice leader is just a first-year student and already got such a good opportunity." They immediately raised their hands countless times saying, "I will go, I will go." He also showed them the way to enter the secret interrogation room behind "Good luck to you." The sky outside was still quiet, with only a few clouds. Time quickly passed, and 2 hours later, at this moment a muscular guy was still trying to vent his anger. After 2 hours of hard struggle, the first-year students had used every trick, starting from normal interrogation at first, then gradually crossing the line. Some even used the spy's worship incense. Others used gongs to strike near his ear to rupture his eardrum, and there was even a monk who set up a table and knocked the wooden bell to enlighten his mind. Ziling held her head in extreme embarrassment in front of those people. Hiao Hiao did not participate and only watched from outside Jiangxi. "Can you make him confess or not?" The person next to her immediately spoke with confidence. "I can make him sing." Hiao Hiao spoke in surprise, really. Then she enthusiastically raised her hand high to attract everyone's attention and said, over here, my friend can make him confess." The commander also looked toward them and said, "Then please invite that student over here." Jiangxi began to step forward, while Hiao Hiao suddenly found it strange. Wasn't he always humble before? Why is it different this time? He walked past under the sharp gaze of Lan Qi and her subordinates. In Jiangxi's heart, there were also doubts. His subordinate zombies always obeyed orders, but kept losing control. He hoped that human guy might know something. Then he opened the door of the interrogation room to step inside. That guy's face was bruised, but he still spoke arrogantly, another one again. He did not even bother to face him and turned away immediately. Jiangxi stood looking at him from a higher position and remained silent. The spy spoke in frustration. "Does your academy have no one left? Sending these foolish kids to deal with me, give up. I will not betray Ming." Then he suddenly swung his hand quickly toward him. On that thin arm, red blood flowed out from a small cut. That guy had not understood anything yet, so he looked down in surprise. Then he burst out laughing as if it were a joke and said, "Are you torturing me? Come on, use a bit more strength, my friend. I am not even afraid of serious torture. This tiny wound is nothing different from a mosquito bite." Jiangxi did not say much and ordered him stand up. The spy actually forced himself to sit up following the order. The faces of Ziling Hiao Hiao and even the commander were all filled with shock and surprise. The wound stained with red on the spy's body was still clearly imprinted on his skin. Zooming in closer inside the room, the strange detail became even more visible. The viruses that Jiangxi had planted had begun to merge into his bloodstream, multiplying rapidly throughout the flow. That guy's brain also gradually changed color as the virus infection spread. His face froze for a moment. At that moment, Jiangxi finally began to question him. "What is your name?" He blankly replied. "My name is Xiao Kai." Hiao Hiao had to exclaim loudly to fully express her surprise. "Leader, he can control human thoughts." Jiangxi faced Xiao Kai and said, "You are the confidant of that Dr. Jieming, so you know everything, right?" He obediently answered like a dog. "That's right, I know most of the things." Now he finally brought up the main issue. The zombies in City Y used to be very obedient. Why did they lose control? The spy also confessed everything clearly. Because Dr. Ming had spread the drug over that city. When the zombies smelled it, they would immediately become agitated and could no longer be controlled. The ordinary zombies had no idea about those strange drugs and just blankly looked at them. After that, they turned into aggressive and unusually large monsters. We ordered them to attack humans, and from that, we obtained combat data of the extraordinary people. Jiangxi asked in a deep voice, "Why did you do that?" Xiao Kai revealed Jiming's entire plan. "I don't really know, but Dr. Ming told me he is doing something very great. He told us to control the zombies, to slaughter humans, in order to collect combat data of the extraordinary people." Lanqi and the young man stared wide-eyed, watching and listening to their conversation. "Where is Dr. Jiming now?" 500 meters underground in the ruins of City H. After finishing the questions, he also ordered Xiao Kai turn around. The following words were all spoken by Jiangxi in the language of the zombies. "You people are truly disgusting. I have already poured a self-destruct virus into your brain." He calmly said a few final words. "Handle it yourself." Xiao Kai obediently followed his command and replied, "Yes," in the area 500 meters underground beneath the ruins of City H, where Jieming was hiding inside his laboratory. His bald subordinate wearing round glasses turned to report Dr. Ming. "According to reliable information, the spy has confessed our location may have been exposed by now." Jieming, dressed somewhat messily, stood still with his arms crossed, thinking. Then he calmly replied, "It's fine, just do whatever needs to be done. Letting them come find us might actually be a good thing." His subordinate said with concern, "But you will be in danger. Those people are not ordinary." Jieming turned to look behind him at the faint blue light and said, "It's all right, the experiment is almost complete anyway." With satisfaction, he admired what was inside the large test tube and said, "Perfect timing." Something that looked exactly like a human brain was floating inside the liquid. Let them witness this great moment, the birth of an entirely new species. After finishing everything, Jiangxi also pushed the door open and stepped outside. All the students looked at him with countless emotions of fear. Wherever he walked, they stepped back because they were afraid. Around Jiangxi was nothing but emptiness as he was isolated and gossiped about by everyone. Ziling also did not dare to approach carelessly and only observed him closely every minute. Lanqi curved her lips into a satisfied smile full of amusement. Then the trembling voices of the students exclaimed, He can control human thoughts." A round of continuous applause rang out along with the words, "Well done." The commander still remained calm as he acknowledged him. "Impressive, the younger generation is truly remarkable. First-year students really are hidden dragons and crouching tigers." Then he told Jiangxi to follow him. "The vice leader position. I promised you I always keep my word. Follow me to register." Jiangxi asked in confusion. "But what about that Dr. Jieming?" He immediately replied. "No rush, we are also looking for him." Lanqi suddenly frowned and looked after them. The group of robots also followed the commander outside, looking very mysterious. Lanqi's subordinate curiously asked, "Is it strange that the vice leader position needs to be registered?" She also felt the same, so she ordered him to follow and see what was going on. Outside the abandoned factory on the outskirts, cold and gloomy raindrops began to fall. They moved along the road already soaked with rain. Jiangxi gradually began to feel that something was wrong as he had to stand in the rain. He looked around in confusion, then asked the person in front, "Where is this place? Didn't you say you were taking me to register? Then look for Dr. Jieming." The commander stopped walking, then suddenly asked, "Zombie, when did you learn to speak human language?" Jiangxi pointed at himself and asked, "Are you talking to me?" Then he suddenly turned around with a loaded gun in his hand and said, "I am talking to you." The gun fired a powerful spark that hit directly onto Jiangxi's head. Lanqi's subordinate quickly grabbed her and pulled her down. "Leader, be careful." The young man was both panicked and worried for Lanqi. "Leader, are you okay?" She carefully looked up. "What could happen to me?" That was the commander's plasma cannon, heated to tens of thousands of degrees that can melt any kind of material. After firing that shot, the commander's gun emitted a plume of white smoke. They may be foolish, but I am not. He transformed it into a hand and muttered, "What is the Academy's security doing?" Not noticing strange things sneaking in. Jiangxi suddenly stood in the middle of the empty ground with the burnt top. The weakness of zombies lies in the head. As long as the head is destroyed, they lose the ability to act. The commander politely said to him, "Sorry, zombie, this is not a place you should come to." But 1 second later, a hand suddenly shot out in front of him. The movement was swift, gliding from one point to another and dragging him away. The commander's body crashed hard into the building at the end of the street. He was still shocked and had not realized what was happening, as his neck was being squeezed tightly. The robots following him immediately appeared to provide support. They fired molten plasma shots like before at the enemy. The relentless attacks into the corner caused the ground there to explode. However, none of the shots hit Jiangxi. He even managed to catch one of the robots. A shadow hurriedly jumped out from the thick smoke. The commander slid along the ground to regain his balance. He gritted his teeth and looked ahead with disbelief. What? From within the smoke, the fleeting silhouette of someone appeared. Jiangxi swiftly took down his robots, turning them into a pile of scrap. Is that really happening? Jiangxi still had no head, but his hands were tightly gripping the robot's head. Lan Qi's subordinate stared wide-eyed in disbelief, saying, "No way." Then he began to act, reaching out his hand to rush forward. The commander quickly tilted his head to dodge. He continued to swing his other hand, pushing him further backward. The commander transformed the arm on his hand into a gun. Then he fired a powerful shot, but Jiangxi dodged it by bending his body low. He exclaimed in surprise, "How can he move so quickly without a head?" While still in confusion, Jiangxi kept kicking him relentlessly. The two separated again as the commander had to jump back to maintain distance. Lan Qi's subordinate was worried that the commander might be in trouble while she seriously said, "He's starting to get serious now." The commander's face darkened, looking terrifying. "Let's stay away from these big and heavy moves men use, or we might get caught up in it." On his side, Jiangxi also created a new layer of skin on his head. His face slowly took shape, and he sighed with relief after seeing everything return to normal. The young man witnessing this screamed even more than the group leader. She said, "Look, his head is growing again." He patiently made a proposal to the chief, saying, "Let's talk. I do not want to hurt you." He furrowed his brows together with contempt. The chief grabbed one side of his cloak and said, "You want to control my mind, huh?" Then he directly threw off his cloak, which was just a pity. He shouted loudly to command a more advanced robot to fly over robot model number 1. They flew out from all directions and all aimed at the place where they were standing to land. The robots crashed straight into the chief, causing loud clashing sounds to echo. Jiangxi wondered while waiting for the smoke to gradually clear. Lan Qi and her subordinates had climbed to a higher and safer place to observe the body of the general chief, which had now completely turned into a robot. He introduced himself saying, "I am a robot." After equipping his gear, he charged forward smugly saying, "I never negotiate with zombies." The commander's first move was a knee strike to Jiangxi's chin. "For a zombie to witness my true form is an honor for you." His body was sent flying backward as the commander advanced forward to intercept him. Jiangxi spun around while the commander bent his knees to gain momentum. The commander directly punched him hard in the stomach. That punch sent him flying high into the sky. The two others were shocked every single moment as they watched this duel. He made a leap to reach Jiangxi in the sky. Then, he unleashed countless rapid punches that sent them flying in all directions across the sky. Jiangxi did not fight back, so he took countless punches all over his body. After beating him for a while, the chief finally decided to change weapons. He kicked him, sending him flying to the ground to prepare for the final strike. Jiangxi slammed his face directly onto the concrete on the road. Then he bounced up like a ball. He landed directly on his body, causing the ground to cave in. The red visor of the chief glowed brightly. Zombie. His two arms crossed over his chest. Must die. His body gradually swollen due to the accumulation of energy inside. Then he tensed up and fired the most powerful nuclear shell from his chest. Lan Qi was startled by the powerful force from it. The previous attack grew louder and blew away everything in its path. Fragments of metal, steel, and streetlights were all thrown up into the air. In front of him now was all white, after nearly wiping everything out. The general breathed heavily and thought to himself that this time he was probably going to die. But a very steady step appeared again. He looked up in amazement and said, "What?" Jiangxi threw his whole body back toward the sky and let out a loud roar that shook the surroundings. Lan Qi and her subordinate held their heads, unable to open their eyes. "What are you doing again?" Even the commander was affected, causing his glasses to crack. Jiangxi's face changed, becoming more frenzied and looking more human. The two others saw another strange phenomenon happening. "What is going on?" He slowly turned around behind himself after evolving. The commander began to tremble. What exactly is it? At this moment he became taller and more mature like a grown man, and the aura around Jiangxi also became unusual. In the sky appeared a large, swirling vortex formed by gathered clouds. Jiangxi, in his new form, stood alone amidst the pile of debris. Above the city, dark clouds swirled together like a tornado blocking out the sun. "Hiyu?" Hiyu looked surprised as she stared out the window and said, "Everyone quickly look over there. What is happening in the sky?" Lan Qi and her subordinate were also panicked. Group leader is in trouble this time. Inside the city, the people also stepped out onto the streets to take a look. Everyone wore a worried expression on their faces, wondering what was happening and what had occurred. It is the first time I have seen clouds take that shape. The commander still kept a considerable distance from Jiangxi, waiting for his next move. Then he gritted his teeth. Damn human, I already gave you a chance to negotiate before. The commander was still trying to catch up with the situation when Jiangxi's voice became even more mysterious. Now tell me. He sneered and said, how do you want to die? Lan Qi's subordinate shouted loudly. His personality has completely changed. She sensed something was wrong and quickly turned around saying, this is not good. The two of them hurriedly jumped to a higher place. Don't just stand there explaining, run away from here quickly. The commander muttered to himself, I've grown this big, yet never has any creature made me feel death like this. Then he shouted, what the hell are you? Then he shouted loudly to intimidate and challenge Jiangxi Zombie, let's fight. At this moment, the two were jumping across rooftops to reach a hidden place. The young man was still shocked. I have read all the Academy's casebooks, but have never seen that kind of zombie. Lan Qi shared the same feeling. I've never seen one either. He then said reassuringly, if we run this far, it should be safe, right? As soon as he finished speaking, a beam of light flashed right past them, almost burning them to ashes. Both of them were hovering in mid-air panic, quickly spreading to the new area. The commander had his 4 limbs broken and was stuck firmly in the wall. Jiangxi stood calmly in front of him. Using the last bit of his strength, he tried to call the number 2, number 3, and number 4 robots. Immediately, the robots from all around jumped toward Jiangxi, who raised one hand. A huge explosion occurred right on the rooftop, lighting up the entire area brightly. 3 people rolled like balls on a rooftop, shouting loudly with difficulty. Although the commander was almost powerless, he still gritted his teeth and tongue, telling Lan Qi, everyone has a responsibility in dealing with the zombies. She immediately shouted, you were the one who poked it first. The two of them flew back up into the sky, splitting up to go in 3 different directions. Jiangxi was still waiting for something below on the road. He suddenly lowered his body and then raised one arm high. A woman's instincts made Lan Qi worried as she looked on, feeling that something was wrong. And just as she feared, he directly plunged his entire arm into the ground. The entire city shook from a massive shockwave. Lan Qi was sliding across the road when she suddenly realized something. She felt that day by day she was getting closer and closer to the surface. The girl was scared and turned around wondering what he wanted to do. Jiangxi powerfully lifted the entire block of earth and stone with one hand. The commander was flying when suddenly he collided with a flat surface. More than half of the city was lifted by Jiangxi, forming a wall. The residents in the other area stood wide-eyed and stunned watching. Seeing this one-of-a-kind scene made them all gape in shock. Oh my god, what is happening? Hiao was so shocked she could not even speak. The whole area just got turned upside down. In front of her, the entire city was in chaos and being lifted up in large chunks. After doing that, Jiangxi still stood still for a moment, as if nothing had happened. He suddenly dashed away at incredible speed to catch someone. The commander was shoved straight into the wall by his arm. A stream of water flowed upward from below to the top of the area. Jiangxi slightly smiled with satisfaction. He held the commander in his hand, then stood above and asked him, can you feel it now? His absolute strength made the robot in his hand completely unable to resist. He mocked him again. You are right, robots are very hard to control. The commander grimaced as he was being squeezed. But you are a conscious human, so you must have a brain, right? He let out a groan of pain. The viruses that Jiangxi planted spread into his bloodstream. Slowly they spread throughout the commander's brain. Every stream of his memories was seen by him. As 2 dark faces appeared, both of them lay flat in a pool of blood. His parents died early and everything turned into the scene of a doctor confronting him to modify his body. The doctor used one hand to dissect him, while the other hand held pieces of metal to install into his body. There was no part left normal. Jiangxi did not seem very interested. A life like that was even more meaningless than being a zombie. Living was more painful than dying. He let go, causing his body to fall. Killing you is considered doing you a favor. Lan Qi below grabbed a streetlight pole and caught the commander. She looked up in shock. He can even read memories. Jiangxi's figure also disappeared right after that. The sky quickly turned to night. The crescent moon hung high, illuminating everything. Jiangxi anxiously packed his things into the suitcase. Doomed, exposed again. I lost control of my emotions again. He himself was also frightened by what had happened. It turned out like this, so terrifying. I am just a kind-hearted zombie. Then he grabbed his luggage and hurriedly ran out of the house. Goodbye, humans. Just as he stepped out into the hallway, a familiar voice echoed, you want to leave. Jiangxi trembled with worry. What do I do now? I don't want to kill anyone to silence them. But having no other choice, he made up his mind to act. Sorry about this. Unexpectedly, when he turned around, a piece of paper was handed in front of him. Ziling held his permit in her hand and said, Vice Commander Jiang Wen, your documents are ready from today onward. You are the Vice Commander of the Academy for Extraordinary People. He stood there bewildered, holding it in his hand, repeatedly saying, huh. Jiangxi even asked again. The commander stamped. This Ziling finished reporting, then turned around and left. That's right. The young man asked again in confusion. He didn't say anything. She paused for a moment, then looked at him. He said, you are human. Then she quickly pushed the door open to go inside. Good luck if you can become the leader later on, you can do whatever you want. At that moment, the commander was inside his house with Lan Qi beside him, taking care of him. She kept scolding him after learning his decision. What, you still plan to use him? You don't know he's a zombie. The commander's entire body was bandaged, so he could only weakly reply. Whether he is a zombie or a human doesn't matter. If we want to capture Dr. Jiming, we need his power. Lan Qi still cautiously reminded him Jiang Si is extremely dangerous when he loses control of his emotions. But he remained as calm as ever. It's fine, how is everything arranged? She replied. Everything is in place already. The commander's eyes narrowed with intense determination. Then he declared, this time we must take down Dr. Jiming. In another place, buildings stood right above the rushing sea under the blazing sunlight. Inside the dilapidated apartment, urgent voices echoed. Brothers, according to reliable sources, our king has been captured by humans. Varmint was extremely furious. Our king is our spiritual support. Now that our support is gone, what should we do? The ordinary zombies opened their mouths wide to shout, deal with the humans, rescue the king. Xiao Hei calmly reassured them, the king will save himself, he just wants to kill humans. Varmint asked curiously, we are not stopping him. But Xiao Hei understood the situation clearly. Besides the king, no one can stop him. The scene shifted to a massive ship equipped with an enormous runway slowly drifting on the calm water. The commander had restored his equipment and stood in the cockpit. Everyone listen up, this is the command center. We only have one chance we must capture, Dr. Jiming at all costs. They arrived at a place with abandoned buildings that still looked very new. Hiao Hiao walked alongside Jiang Si with excitement. So this is enemy territory. I didn't expect the city to remain relatively intact. A powerful stomp echoed as the soldiers lined up in formation and reported Unit 56, fully assembled. Jiang Si stood confused looking at the soldiers in front of him. They automatically ordered each other to bow before Vice Commander Jiang, the great Jiang Si. A representative spoke loudly, with great vigor. We are from Central District B Unit 56. From today onward, we only follow the orders of Vice Commander Jiang Si. He froze in confusion as they kept talking. Unit 56 has a total of 120,000 soldiers. Please inspect. Now under his command there were countless soldiers and tanks ready and waiting. He hurriedly leaned closer to the commander. You all follow whatever I say, right? The commander seriously replied. Yes, Jiang Si continued. If I tell you to die, will you really die? The officer pulled out a grenade ready to act. Vice Commander Jiang's orders are the orders of God. I feel so honored. Jiang Si shouted in horror. Hey, I was just joking, just joking. Then he hurriedly grabbed the grenade and threw it somewhere else. After that, he finally breathed a sigh of relief because he had just done something stupid. On the cannon barrel of the tank, a man dressed in tight clothes sat there and spoke with disdain. So you're just that useless Vice Commander Jiang, huh? I thought it was some big important position. He and Hiao Hiao looked up at the same time to see who it was. The two of them jumped down to the ground without stopping their foul mouths. I really don't get it sending some worthless trash to guard such a crucial strategic position. Both of them wore armor made of steel. We are from the Steel Academy sent here to cooperate with you. People from the Academy for extraordinary people to carry out arrests. Hiao Hiao immediately recognized the two of them, aren't they? The Steel Blade team from the Steel Academy leader, Bang, and Vice leader Chui. At that moment, things aboard the base ship were not any more peaceful. Another commander held two swords in his hands and spoke with an arrogant tone. So it's just internal problems among you, yet the higher-ups still called us here to help. Help is help, but I really don't get why you made a newbie the vice commander and even let him guard such an important strategic position. Lam Qi replied in annoyance, Commander Gang told you to come support us, not to badmouth others. Outsiders have no right to judge the appointment of the Student Council's vice commander in our academy. At the same time, they discussed the plan. Business is business. We are in charge of entering the city to make the arrest. You are in charge of blocking the escape routes from the outside. The northern part of the city has complicated traffic and wide roads, yet you only sent one vice commander and even a newbie to guard it. The commander of the Academy for Extraordinary People coldly spoke because he can crush you to pieces. He still hadn't realized the truth and continued boasting proudly. Talk big, all you want. I'm stronger than him. Commander Qin, whatever, I already sent my team leaders over there to support you. People just sit tight and watch. Jiming and his assistant were also ready for the battle at this moment. The young man reported Ming they have surrounded the city. Jiming gave a short order. Release the zombie. He immediately pressed the red button to open the cage door and let the horde of zombies rush out. Clearly on the surveillance screen, he accidentally saw Varmint. What kind of strange thing has snuck in? Bullets rained down all over the city, making the low-level zombies unable to resist. Group leader Beng and vice leader Chui had just finished off a bunch of weaklings, like snails with no fighting spirit at all. Exactly, and Jiang Si was holding the body of a zombie in his hand saying, is this my kind? Hiao Hiao whistled and turned her face away. Shh, I didn't hear anything. The commander suddenly became arrogant and suggested to Deputy Commander Jiang, you're not needed here anymore, leave it to us, go home. He even pointed behind him as he uttered those scornful words, a rookie like you should be sitting at the kids' table. Hiao Hiao argued back on behalf of Jiang Si. He just got here, shut your mouth already. The man on the other side darkened his face in anger and threatened her, making Hiao Hiao so frightened she ran off to hide. Do you have any right to speak here? He snapped. Suddenly the sound of footsteps resembling those of a human echoed near their location. Varmint carried his gasoline can and walked over with a fierce expression. Jiang Si did not notice anything unusual and was surprised. Varmint, why are you here? The young subordinate of Ji Ming was so excited that he laughed loudly. What kind of creature is this all? The stats are maxed out, truly perfect. This is the first time I've seen a boss of this level. Then he pushed the lever to escalate the battle. Come on, I can't wait any longer. Back to 2 hours ago, there were only AGE and a small zombie standing in the middle of the road. Just now, all of you were shouting so loud, but in the end, no one showed up. No loyalty at all, some good brothers. The zombie quickly shoved the gasoline tank into his hands. This is the fuel you need. What you want to do has nothing to do with me. Then he bent his leg and ran away. I dare not disobey the Great King's orders. I'm leaving now. Good luck to you. Ji shouted loudly. He held the gasoline can in his hand and said very optimistically, Don't let the Great King know you such a coward. With his warlike nature, Varmint decided on his own. Damn it, I alone can slash through all of humanity. At that moment, the test tubes of Jieming were also dropped, causing him to bump into something. What is that smell? From the laboratory came an announcement registering a new species. Now they are facing each other in complete silence, with only a single shadow approaching. Jiang Si kept asking Varmint, Are you really you? Hiao Hiao then said, What the hell is this? Varmint's saw cut down to open the fuel tank lid, then he poured a large amount into his mouth. A stream of yellow liquid flowed down his chest as he kept swallowing. Hiao Hiao was shocked. He was drinking gasoline while Varmint pulled the zipper of his fuel container open. He tensed up strongly, then shouted, Fire it up. Varmint tilted his face up to the sky like a crazy wolf. His mouth opened wide, roaring the terrifying sound of a zombie. Hiao Hiao, and the others hurriedly covered their ears. The glass in nearby buildings also shattered due to the immense pressure. Jiang Si was the only one unaffected, while the people behind were writhing in pain. The ground was upheaved, and a girl like Hiao Hiao couldn't withstand it and was thrown away. She lay on the road in horror. Oh my god, what on earth was that? Varmint was still out of control at that moment, extremely belligerent. Damn humans, come play with me. The group leader suddenly grinned. Finally, there's an interesting one. Almost deafened me. Only Jiang Si grabbed Hiao Hiao's hand, got it, then led her to run away quickly. The confused girl turned her head and said, Why do we have to run? We have fighting strength, comparable to the group leader. Then he replied, You can't beat him to death. Varmint stayed behind with his body fully charged with energy. Hiao Hiao heard something unbelievable again. What are you kidding? Jiang Si emphasized. I'm not joking. Varmint looked up and laughed loudly. Jiang Si said, He is 100% definitely immortal. The group leader glanced at them and sarcastically said, A damn bat faster than a plane. The deputy leader raised his hand to start group leader. Just leave this boss to me. Then he approached Varmint himself in a very naive way. The group leader was still smugly giving instructions when the deputy leader's body flew backward. Remember to save some breath so I can have a little fun. The deputy slammed straight into the tank behind him, making it shake. He looked on in surprise, not noticing the dark figure right in front of him. What the deputy was already foaming at the mouth and passed out on the spot. By the time he turned his face back, it was already too late. Varmint, with his fist ready, was prepared to send this slimy bastard off. How do you want to die? He grimaced, trying to fight back. You! Jiang Si, Hiao Hiao and the commander had made it to the rooftop and were gasping for breath. Down below, Varmint was violently hurling the metal man all over the city and destroying buildings. The young man in the lab laughed loudly. What is this? That's way too powerful. The group leader was helpless against Varmint's incredible speed. Damn it, I'm not that easy to mess with. While he still had time to speak, that high-level zombie had already spun him around. Then the metal man slammed his face straight into the ground. Varmint continued to hit at the group leader's face, then with a sudden strike sent him flying like a ball. The deputy leader was still vomiting when he was slammed straight into a body by him. Varmint suddenly appeared right in front of him and raised a leg to pin him down. The sharp saw blade swung high. The group leader gritted his teeth and snarled what? Fortunately, he managed to use his steel to block the saw blade. The three others upstairs were still looking down below. Hiao Hiao worriedly said, The group leader is about to lose his strength. Varmint's laughter grew louder, forcing the group leader to brace himself and resist. I'm a respectable group leader. How could I lose? His face hardened as if he was pondering something. Then he threw away all pride and cried out loudly, Mom, I don't want to die. Help! Jiang Si and Hiao Hiao were looking through binoculars, speechless. Help me. Jiming's subordinate young man was extremely pleased. The Human Academy is so foolish, yet today has come. The three people on the rooftop couldn't show themselves. Hiao Hiao looked down through the scope. Is he going to kill everyone here? The commander was also anxious. Deputy Leader Jiang, what should we do? Jiang Si was actually calculating in his mind that if he took action, he would be exposed. After thinking, he turned to Hiao Hiao and said, You go down and hit him. The girl shouted, Deputy Leader Jiang, don't you see how strong that monster is? Even the group leader isn't a match. Do you want me to become its food? Jiangxi still didn't care and ordered her, "Put your hand out here." He bit down directly on the arm, making Hiao struggle in panic. She was released and stared blankly at the bite mark on her arm. Having seen this before, she quickly grabbed her arm and exclaimed, "Could it be that you want to control my brain like that guy, Randiep?" He replied, "I'm not that boring yet." His words were full of hidden meaning as Jiangxi returned to his business of eavesdropping. "Take it easy." The group leader cried his heart out and begged Varmint, "Mum, I was wrong, I shouldn't have provoked you, please spare me." The more he shouted, the more excited Varmint became, pressing the saw blade closer. Suddenly, a powerful voice rang out right behind them. "Hey, that saw guy is really annoying." Varmint was surprised and turned around after hearing a very creepy laugh from someone. The sneakers lifted up and then stomped down on the road. The person carried a 6-barreled gun, dragging it on the ground, sending sparks flying. Hiao appeared with a big smile and deep eyes. "Come play with me like a zombie." The cells were moving freely inside Hiao's body. At this moment, the cells suddenly began to mutate. The cells degenerated, and the genetic structure was almost destroyed, the gene chain broken. But then they recombined into a completely new gene chain. After being bitten by Jiangxi and undergoing the transformation, Hiao held her weapon and broke into mad smile. Varmint felt a bit intrigued when he saw her, but then glancing at the group leader, he suddenly realized who she was. He wiped away his tears and spoke, "The girl from earlier." At this moment, all his attention was focused on her. He asked, "Are you playing with me?" Then provocatively he continued, "What the hell are you?" After the transformation, Hiao seemed completely different, breaking into a sinister smile. She only knew how to talk big, but before finishing, she still didn't forget to taunt him. "Which onion stalk are you?" After finishing her sentence, she immediately raised her weapon. She screamed wildly, "Stop talking nonsense!" Then the gun in her hand unleashed a torrent of bullets, non-stop towards Varmint. "Here, have a taste of some lead." The bullets from Hiao's gun kept flying rapidly towards him. She seemed incredibly excited, laughing loudly as she kept firing bullets. Varmint effortlessly dodged the barrage of bullets she fired, while the group leader could only hide behind him, hugging his knees and praying. He was utterly terrified, tears streaming down his face. On this side, Varmint seemed to see something very terrifying in the dark. Meanwhile, the group leader was rescued by his teammates, and they ran off quickly. It turned out that Hiao at some point had flipped upside down and was now in the sky, which was why he was so panicked. She was in the air, quickly removing the safety pins from the 2 grenades in her hands. Then she shoved both grenades into his mouth and flipped away, saying, "I'll give you an appetizer." The moment she touched the ground, that was when her grenades unleashed their firepower. But to everyone's surprise, the 2 grenades didn't leave a scratch on Varmint. He happily walked out from the smoke, laughing loudly. "Doesn't tickle at all." Right after that, before he could react, he took several bullets straight to the face. Hiao, biting the bullet shell, exclaimed with delight, "That felt so good." The soldier beside Jiangxi shuddered at the scene and asked Deputy Leader Jiang, "What did you just do?" To this, Jiangxi calmly replied, "Just modified Hiao's genes." After that, he suddenly fell silent for a moment, then focused on infiltrating Hiao's genes and said, "Hiao must still be stronger than this." On this side, after Hiao shot him in the face, Varmint finally struggled a bit and groaned. It hurts so much." She was almost completely driven mad, laughing out loud. "I love this feeling so much." Seeing her like this, the group leader and his comrade huddled together, trembling in fear, on the verge of tears. Suddenly, Varmint regained his composure, raised his saw blade and charged toward her. "You think you can hit me with just that?" His saw blade hand was directly dodged by her, and she stomped it down with her foot. Then she immediately lifted her leg and kicked him away. Varmint received a kick from her, and it hurt so much that he almost spat. He could not control and rolled dozens of times away. He kept rolling like that, with his head touching the ground and his butt pointing to the sky. Took a kick from Hiao and still kept rolling dozens more times. The team leader stood to the side, directly frightened by her, saying she was obviously that strong but pretended to be weak earlier. His teammates, hearing that, also voiced their agreement. "That's right, are you crazy?" No one knew where it came from, but this time her weapon had changed into something else, an RPG launcher. Jiangxi had been observing from the rooftop all this time, and for some reason was suddenly a little surprised. Varmint rolled and slammed into the wall of some warehouse before finally stopping. It hurt so much. Coincidentally, the spot he crashed into had a lot of gasoline cans, so he directly grabbed one and chugged it down. After drinking the gasoline, Varmint had recovered his state and immediately provoked, shouting loudly, "Continue Hiao." On this side, Hiao was not afraid at all and responded with a crazed laugh. The team leader and his teammates suddenly cried out in fear, "Mommy, there's a lunatic." After that, Hiao immediately fired the first shot toward Varmint. The bullet hadn't even reached him yet when it was already sliced in half. After that, he immediately moved at a speed so fast it couldn't be seen, slashed through Hiao, then landed far away. Hiao's body was thus sawed in half. Her blood splattered everywhere as her abdomen was severed. Seeing that the team leader and his teammates shouted in worry, "We're doomed." Then Varmint, thinking he had killed her, became extremely arrogant and shouted loudly, I have an immortal body, you can't kill me, so stop wasting your strength. On this side, Jiangxi suddenly fell silent, clenching his fist tightly, with a strange expression, not knowing what he was planning to do. And then Hiao Hiao's body gradually healed as if nothing had happened. Her body began to reattach itself right before his eyes. Varmint was so frightened by this scene that he broke into a cold sweat and gaped, exclaiming, "What?" Hiao Hiao, standing on the opposite side, also began to speak, immortal. Her tone was utterly insane, yet delighted as she laughed and said, "Sorry, me too." At the same time, her body had completely reattached itself without a trace of injury. The team leader and his teammate were even more terrified this time and screamed loudly. After a fierce battle between Hiao Hiao and Varmint, this place was also heavily damaged, with thick smoke and dust rising all around the two of them. Though terrified, the team leader and his teammate didn't forget to eavesdrop and add their reactions. After being granted immortality by Jiangxi, she became even more insane, laughing and shouting, "Come on, give me more!" The team leader and his teammate screamed in fear. What kind of person is this? After that, both of them panicked and took off running, shouting, "These people are all freaks, somebody save me!" Varmint was also frightened by this scene and hesitantly asked, What is that, zombie?" On this side, Jiangxi was leisurely, holding binoculars, observing the fierce battle below, while the soldier next to him was still shivering in fear. He was also a bit surprised and exclaimed, "I didn't expect Hiao Hiao to become this strong after the gene mutation." After saying that, he continued talking about her current physical condition, but now her bones are shattered. He grew a bit tense as he analyzed. All her muscles have also been torn apart. Although she can use gene recombination, she still feels pain when being slashed across the waist. Then he urgently shouted, "We have to end this now." His face turned dark and furious as he said, "Varmint, you disobeyed orders by not staying inside. Don't blame me if I beat you up." Right after that, Hiao Hiao's body suddenly became even more powerful than before, and she let out a few savage laughs. Then suddenly she charged in at lightning speed, closing in on Varmint, catching him completely off guard. Before he could finish his sentence, he took a heavy blow to the face. After that, she landed another solid hit on his body. Wherever he was kicked flying, she immediately rushed in and closed the distance. Hiao Hiao appeared from behind and struck him hard on the head with her weapon. She kept attacking relentlessly, wave after wave, leaving him no chance to fight back. Then Varmint fell straight to the ground with such force that it kicked up a thick cloud of dust. At this point, Varmint seemed to have lost all ability to fight and could only speak in broken words, But before he could say anything, he took a series of blows to the head. She had just lifted her weapon when she brought it down again, landing another blow to his head. Every time Varmint managed to lift his head, he was immediately struck again, each hit so painful that he could only cry out in agony. At this point, he finally couldn't take it anymore and desperately begged, "Please, no more, I give up." His eyes welled up with tears as he pitifully said, "I'll go home now, please stop, I'm going home right now." Jiangxi, observing from afar and witnessing the humiliating surrender of his subordinate, could only stay silent without making any comment. The four-eyed guy on this side, seeing him begging, was also left speechless. Hearing Varmint repeatedly beg like that, Hiao Hiao finally lowered her weapon, seemingly willing to spare him. Who would have thought that the moment Hiao Hiao lowered her weapon, he immediately acted like a scoundrel, raising his fist and sucker punching her in the face. She was punched so hard that she flew back and crashed into the team leader and his teammate, who were in the middle of fleeing. Seeing his subordinate's sneak attack, Jiangxi held his head in frustration and shouted angrily, "Varmint!" Then he turned toward Hiao Hiao and shouted, "You actually believed what he said?" After saying that, he urgently added, "Why weren't you more cautious? The moment you let your guard down, everything went right back to how it was." On this side, after being sent flying, she left behind a trail of dust. In pain, she leaned against the two others, trembling, as she said, "I don't know." Seeing her return to the appearance of an ordinary person, Varmint grew excited and shouted, "So it was just stimulants? Huh, worn off already, hasn't it?" Then he swung his saw-blade arm confidently and taunted, "Next time, don't believe a word a corpse says." The four-eyed guy watching through the screen laughed excitedly and said, "What kind of zombie is this? So strong. Not only has hidden skills, but also a passive sneak attack skill, truly top tier." Jiangxi, completely helpless, covered his face and let out a long sigh. The four-eyed guy seemed overjoyed, laughing and pounding the table as he shouted, "Come on, slice them all up, finish it already." On the screen appeared the panicked images of Hiao Hiao and the two others shouting, "Help, I don't want to die," while another part of the screen showed the figure of Varmint, laughing maniacally. At that moment, the four-eyed guy suddenly noticed something on the screen. He looked at the image displayed on Jiangxi's screen and was a bit surprised, muttering, "Another one." His figure stood firmly facing him head-on. The four-eyed guy grinned slyly and said, "It's fine with your strength. No one can be your match. Bring it on." On this side, Varmint seemed to have sensed the immense power of the man, and he began to tremble uncontrollably. Jiangxi's expression was dark and cold as he called out his name, Varmint. Then he slowly asked, "Do you still remember who I am?" The three, Hiao Hiao, the team leader, and his teammate, paused their act when they saw him step forward. Their expressions quickly shifted back to panic. The four-eyed guy, seeing that Varmint wasn't moving, was completely confused and shouted, "Why aren't you moving? Hit him for me." But over here, he still couldn't move a muscle and could only groan, facing the man's question. "Didn't I tell you to stay at home? Explain, why are you here?" He began to recall that earlier, one of his subordinates had come to report Varmint. "There's a corpse coming to cause trouble. He wants you to be his underling." At that time he had laughed and asked back, "Who's the idiot saying that?" In the past, when he came face to face with the man, he could only force out a mocking smile and say, "So it's you." He didn't forget to sneer. "You're neither fully human nor fully corpse." He put on a face that was just asking for a beating and challenged, looking as weak as a slug. "What makes you think you can tell me to be your underling?" In the present, the three on this side had no idea what was going on and stood with their mouths agape, one asking one, answering, "What are they talking about? No idea? Looks like he peed his pants." Unexpectedly, Varmint, facing Jiangxi, was so terrified that he lost control and peed his pants. His face went blank as he trembled in fear. Varmint's bodily urine spilled out from between his legs, just like that. The four-eyed guy was furious, frantically smashing the button and shouting, "What are you doing? Hit him!" On this side, even though Jiangxi's expression couldn't be seen clearly, the chilling aura radiating from him could still be felt. Varmint remained completely still, unable to move at all, breaking out in a cold sweat all over his body. Suddenly he recalled the moment when he had to face Jiangxi before, but in a different form. Back then, his face was gripped tightly by Jiangxi. With one hand, the pain so intense, it forced him to squeeze out an apology. Jiangxi pretended not to understand and asked in return, "What's wrong?" His subordinates standing below were extremely worried about him and called out Varmint. Jiangxi let out a fierce smile and said to him, "Why aren't you talking anymore?" His deadly gaze locked onto Varmint as he slowly spoke. "Come on, tell me what gives you the right." Seeing Jiangxi in this state, he was so frightened that his eyes widened and a stream of snot ran down from his nose. At that moment, a furious shout rang in his ear. "What are you doing?" The four-eyed guy kept shouting, urging him, "Don't be afraid. Aren't you supposed to be immortal?" Right now, Varmint doesn't even have the mind to think about defeating him. But in truth, the four-eyed guy didn't really know. Terrifying memories from the past kept flooding his mind. Varmint was recalling his miserable state back then, an immortal who was torn apart and made into sushi, hanging on a tree for hundreds of years. The four-eyed guy didn't care that Varmint was so worried he was nearly in tears. He just kept hammering the red button in front of him, shouting, hit it for me." At that moment, he immediately shouted loudly, "No." Then the control panel of the four-eyed guy exploded all at once. Varmint, scared, curled up and ran while shouting, "I don't want to fight him. If you want to fight, then do it yourself." The four-eyed guy was stunned by this and stood frozen, his jaw hanging wide open. Seeing that the three Hiao, the team leader, and his teammate also fell silent all at once. On this side, Jiangxi was similarly silent, sharing the same stunned silence. They were completely speechless at his shameful act of running away. Up to this moment, the four-eyed guy still thought he could fully control Varmint, so he was filled with deep regret, thinking, "Damn it, this is the first time I've encountered a situation where he broke free from control." But it seemed he still refused to give up and wanted to keep sending out more Jiangshi to attack them. "No problem, I still have other Jiangshi. Let me show you how I deal with you." Suddenly, a hand placed on his shoulder, and the person said, "All right, give up this path." Hearing that voice, he turned to look at Ming Jiaming, then reminded the four-eyed guy firmly, "Stop it now." Suddenly on this side, a large helicopter appeared flying in the sky. Inside the helicopter appeared a few familiar figures. Then a voice rang out, "Team leaders, we have arrived."